everyone, it's Jonathan, and welcome back to Wonderland Wednesday. This episode is part 2 of a 3-part series on Disney educational content revolving around Wonderland adjacent material. Like I said in part 1, I was planning an episode on Donald in Mathmagic Land, which is mildly Alice adjacent, and I asked Jenna and Mark to join me, and then Jenna sent me a couple more shorts, so we turned this into a mini-series. So this week we're talking about an EPCOT educational short featuring Figment the Dragon alongside a live-action Alice in Wonderland called Writing Magic with Figment and Alice in Wonderland. I have always heard of the character Figment, but I have never seen him in anything. This is the first time I've ever seen Figment in anything.
Okay.
Oh,
Because
oh
you
yeah,
haven't been
you've
to
never
the
been to a
Epcot,
Disney
yeah.
park, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I haven't.
Do you want to explain it to him, or shall I?
You go ahead, Jenna. You got this.
All right. Well, as a Disneylander, I felt a little ill-equipped to explain the wonders of Figment. But basically, when Walt Disney World opened their second park, Epcot, they had this ride called Journey into Imagination. It was a beautiful ride, literally about a man named Dreamfinder who makes up a figment called Figment, a little purple dragon. And they were kind of like the mascots of Epcot at this time because they were the only characters Epcot had. And the other Disney characters weren't allowed in the park at first because they wanted to set it up. I don't know. Early Epcot was kind of a different. It was unique. It's hard to explain Epcot in a nutshell to someone who doesn't have the context for it. But at that time, they didn't want the other Disney characters in the park because they wanted to differentiate it and they wanted it to appeal more to adults. But still, they had like a kid-oriented ride, Journey into Imagination. So Anyway, Figment as the only character in this park, really, besides Dreamfinder, like blew up in popularity at that time. So 1989 is when this short was made. And they were also like doing a lot of Epcot media because Epcot was a more educational experience. You were supposed to learn while you were in the park. And this is still part of the Disney educational programs, but it's kind of like they got like another chapter of it, I guess you could say, like called Epcot Educational Media that this short was a part of. But anyway, at some point, who was the original sponsor of Journey to Imagination?
I don't remember.
Was it Kodak? I believe it was Kodak, but I might be wrong. In Epcot, all the rides were like sponsored by different companies, and the sponsor basically, according to the contract, they wanted the ride to be updated like every 10-year-ish or so. So they updated the ride. They took Figment out.
Yes,
People were
Kodak
upset.
was the first sponsor.
Kodak was? I was
Yes.
right? Yay!
Yeah.
All right, and people were upset at losing Figment. They put him back in, and that's the current ride today. To be honest, he's a little annoying. It's really sad. I highly recommend looking at the original Journey to Imagination if you ever have the time. You won't be spoiling anything because it's no longer there. It's something else now. It's journeying into your imagination with Figment. But Figment is still very much a very beloved character. So that's the context behind this character.
You can get a lot of merch of him at the parks.
Yeah. I bought a statue of him, like a little ceramic statue of him when I was there. He's a cute boy. He's so charming, especially in the original ride. Anyway, so I guess in regards to this, apparently this was part of a series called Language Arts Through Imagination. And I guess he was in this series, like kind of, I guess you could say hosting it.
So was this at the parks?
No. Well, I mean, it was filmed. It looks like it was like kind of filmed in the vicinity of the parks at least. Because I noticed Alice, for instance, in this, she is wearing one of the park Alice costumes.
Oh, good catch. Hadn't noticed that.
Yeah, it's basically the smallest size available. So, skipping ahead a little bit, the Alice is played by a little girl. The park costume is meant for adults. So they put her into the smallest size. It's still a little too big on her, but that's why it looks bigger. So yeah, it seems like to me it's filmed at least nearby, but I can't tell you where it was filmed. And it also looks like the other parts of the series, Language Arts Through Imagination, one had like Peter Pan. So it looks like they did this like multiple characters with Figment.
That doesn't really surprise me. That seems like, well, judging from the other one, it seems like they like reusing their movies in an educational setting. Because
Yeah.
it's what it's probably similar to what they used to do with the TV. Like they already have all this animated
Mm,
footage. Why
yeah.
not get some more use out of it?
It's probably cheaper than making something new or getting
Yeah,
rights for something else.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of their live action, sorry, a lot of their educational programs use live action. I've watched a few Disney educational programs, not all of them. To be honest, it would be interesting to have someone who's into Disney educational programs that could tell you, like, he's like, oh yeah, I've seen them all. um, but I
There's
remember,
your
like,
next co-host, Jonathan.
yeah, I remember like live action one about like playground safety with Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Um, like they had a lot of these, and they were usually live action just because it kind of ends up being cheaper. And
Hmm.
then they reuse the animation they do use is usually reused, though in this Figment is he is animated, but I would assume probably the animation is reused throughout the series and maybe even any other series they might have been in at this time.
I felt like the animation was, I don't want to say cheaper, but like they used as minimal movement as they could, so probably was cheaper. Like it did not look bad, but it
Yeah.
wasn't as fluid as you would expect a Disney film to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I don't think they well, they're not making profit off this essentially,
Yeah.
really.
Hmm.
So anything this is more about image, I guess.
So is this something that they would have sent to schools as well?
Yeah, or schools would have bought it. So this would have been on a VHS tape. So I guess we could jump into it. So this one, there's a kid. He has a Alice book. Funnily, I had the same Alice book growing up.
I thought it looked familiar. I didn't have it, but it looked familiar. So I wonder if it was something that maybe I saw at the library or something.
It was pretty big at the time, I think. And if Alice goes missing in it, and Figment's like, want to help me help Alice to get back to Wonderland, then yeah, that's basically it. That's the plot of the short. And for some reason, they decide writing a story will help her get back into Wonderland, even though it's never really explained why she's out of Wonderland.
There
And
was
that's
there
the
was so much
story.
about that that did not. I mean, it's supposed to be teaching kids the writing
The
process,
writing
like
process. Yeah.
brainstorming, writing, and rewriting. But like
Yeah.
the way they went about it, it was like if their imagination has this much power to bring this wizard to life and then to go and visit the wise dragon in another land, why can't you just write that Alice goes home?
Yeah, it's silly. But to be honest, like I remember this whole like, oh, how to write a story thing when I was a
Hmm.
kid, and these exact steps. But like like oh yeah, I remember this, and I never understood the revised one, right? The revised step, because I'm like, I wrote it. What do you want from me? Like, you want me to rewrite it like immediately after I wrote it? And then, that's not how revising or drafting your story goes.
I feel like not that I'm writing fiction or anything, but I feel like I'm rewriting as I write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like it's an understandable process when you're an adult. Um, I feel like it makes more sense to kids if you like have them ask other people what they think and whether
Yeah.
they incorporate those ideas into their story or something like that.
Hmm.
But I never understood that as a kid. I was just like, okay, I'll change some words around, I guess. Like,
Change a big to a huge or something like that.
and I guess the main thing is just teaching kids to like be open to changing things. Like your story's not done. Your story just doesn't have to be done because that's just how it is. You could change it if you want to, maybe.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I've always thought it was a weird way of teaching kids how to write stories. But that's not any criticism of this actual short, really, because that's just something they did. Were you guys ever taught to write stories like this?
I don't remember how I was taught to write stories, actually.
I don't think I was ever taught really to write fiction. I was mostly, my writing projects were like book reports, not making up
I
my own stories.
I remember the 5-page essay that I remember got knocked into me from
What
a young age.
the first time I
5-paragraph essay, sorry.
really the first time I can think of that I was given an assignment to write a story was in college when I purposely took a fiction or poetry writing class because I took a few of those classes just because I was interested in that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But I don't remember ever being assigned that for regular school.
Oh, well, that's interesting. I remember it.
I think maybe in fifth grade, I did have to write for our language arts. We had writing, like had to write some stories. I remember writing for that, but I that's probably it.
I think I wrote stories for fun, but
Yeah,
I don't think
same.
I was ever
Not for
assigned
school.
it.
Hmm.
I wrote stories for fun. I never rewrote my stories though.
Hmm.
I didn't either. I just wrote something and moved on.
I remember particularly this one assignment where we had to write the Three Little Pigs, and I was missing the day that my teacher assigned it. So I came back the next day and someone was like, "Oh yeah, we're writing our stories about Three Little Pigs. Like, you have to write a story." And I was like, "What does that mean?
The
The Three
story
Little
already
Pigs is the Three Little
exists.
Pigs. Like, do I have to write about what happens to them after everything? Is that it?" And so that's what I did. I guess my teacher was trying. I guess she was trying to teach them about adaptations. I don't know, retelling. It was weird.
Like putting something in your own words, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So my version, the little kids, Three Little Pigs went to college after everything,
Wow.
and then became educated and got jobs in the happily ever after.
Education saves you from the big bad wolves.
Ironically, I did not go to college. Or
Nice.
actually, I did. I didn't finish. Anyway, so that's my thought process about writing stories for kids. Whereas this thing, um, this short, I said, let's see, I said Figment kidnaps children confirmed. Um, which he does. Uh, the Alice actress isn't that bad, and she's even attempting Catherine's Beaumont's accent, which is a difficult accent.
I thought the accent was good. Wasn't sure if that was her real accent or if that was she trying to do it.
It does sound put on. Like, I don't believe it's
Hmm.
her actual accent. I think she's trying to imitate Alice.
I wasn't fond of that the kid though. You know me a little bit.
It felt like they were little kids putting on a play,
Yeah, which I guess is
especially the
what they're
boy.
supposed to be doing. Yeah.
Alice was better than him.
Yeah, correct.
I was actually a little endeared by Andy, though. That's his name. I
Okay.
wrote it
I
down
mean, he was a cute
because
kid.
he says Alice was his favorite story. How can I
I
not like him?
I like how he saw her and went, Alice in Wonderland, you're here. Like her name is Alice in
Yeah, yeah, it's the
Wonderland.
same. Yeah.
Reminds me of Alice in Wonderland in Paris, that weird movie from the 60s.
I
Um,
haven't seen that one yet.
you don't need to. It's not even about Alice in Wonderland. It's uh anyway, so I'm like, oh, it's his favorite book. How wonderful. And then immediately almost negates it. I still kind of like him, but he almost negates it by saying, I know a girl named Dorothy with ruby slippers. And I was like, oh, screw you. You're not a nerd after all.
You read the book adaptation of the movie. That's what happens.
Yeah, evidently. Oh, goodness knows his favorite book version of Alice is the Disney adaptation. So,
Correct. There is no Jabberwocky. There is no Bandersnatch.
That's probably true though. If his book of Alice in Wonderland was from the Disney Alice in Wonderland, who's to say his book of Wizard of Oz wasn't from the MGM Wizard of Oz?
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, probably. I actually did have my first copy of Wizard of Oz was the original Wizard of Oz text, but it had illustrations heavily inspired by the MGM movie.
Wow.
So,
Did they paint the rubies red? I mean, the
no,
slippers
it was
red.
silver. It was still illustrations for the book, and Dorothy
Okay.
was younger than Judy Garland.
Mhm.
But the illustrations for like how her dress looked, the Scarecrow, the Tin Woodsman, and the Cowardly Lion looked very much like the movie.
Mhm.
So yeah, I can imagine there's book adaptations that focus more. Oh my gosh, I'm just remembering there was a Barnes and Noble like leather bound edition where she had red slippers or something.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I was so upset. I was like, "What are you doing?"
Like to speak to your manager.
I feel like Barnes and Noble should have better quality control than that.
They really should,
That
but
is that's really bad for Barnes and
this is the
Noble.
world we live in. No one cares.
The downfall of society as illustrated by the wrong slippers on the Wizard of Oz book.
You understand me. And then I also liked how Figment was like, Lewis Carroll had a wonderful imagination. And I was like, oh, it's so nice to hear nice things about Lewis Carroll.
That's true. One thing that stood out to me is like this, their whole thing that pushes them to go through this writing process is because they're trying to ask the White Rabbit for help on how to get Alice back, and he's like, he doesn't really have time to answer them. He just throws out like one word at a time, right, or something like that, and then every time after when they need to find another step, they have to ask the White Rabbit again, and then he gives them step two of the process, which is like, if you have all this time to talk to us, couldn't you just kind of told how to get Alice back and
Well, isn't
already
it
instead
like
of
he doesn't even talk to them? It's like other characters are like, oh, I heard him say.
yeah,
Yeah, like
that's true.
the Tweedles are like brainstorm and write, I guess.
And that annoyed me too. The redubbing of the voices it just sounded so bad. But
The impersonator wasn't too bad though. I was like, he could have been worse.
for which character?
Well, the Tweedles were just but his Mad Hatter was pretty good. I don't know. I just assumed it was the same person. I don't know why I assumed that. Maybe it's not.
Yeah, I didn't look at the
Credits.
credits for that,
I didn't look either.
but like it just threw me off.
Yeah,
I don't think it was Edwin.
Mad Hatter impression was okay.
I know Billy, the comedian and actor Billy Barty, he was the voice of Figment in this. I don't know if he voiced Figment elsewhere.
I have no idea. To be perfectly honest, I recognized Billy Barty, but it was because there was an actor in the 1933 Alice named Billy Barty, and I don't think it's the same person.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't know who that is. Then I thought in the brainstorm part, like all the
Actually, the Billy Barty was in the 1933 Alice in Wonderland, so it is the same person.
wait, it's the same person?
Yeah, he played the White Pawn / the baby uncredited in Alice in Wonderland,
Dude.
1933.
Yeah, then I do know him.
Okay.
He sounds I don't know, I would have thought he would sound much older in the 80s, but okay.
Well, he did have a form of dwarfism, so I don't know if that affected his voice as well.
Maybe. I don't know. Figment just sounds younger to me for some reason. I don't know, maybe it's just the association Figment's young. So no. I'm just surprised. I'm like, oh my gosh, it is him. Wow.
There we go. You learned stuff on this podcast.
Yeah. I was just gonna be like, haha, same name.
The one other thing that stood out to me that is, I'm sure it's a total coincidence, but Alice became a knight. I was like, did Burton watch this?
Sorry, did who watch this?
Burton,
Burton.
Tim Burton.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
I wrote, okay, well, in general, I thought the brainstorm wall was very surprisingly detailed and lovely.
Magic pickles.
But then let your imagination run wild, and they've only thought of basic fairy tale tropes. Except for Figment, who's actually trying. And with pickles. But yeah, like I wrote interesting that Alice is a knight and not the other way around. Considering that she was crowned a queen in through Looking Glass.
Oh, yeah, they should have done that.
I don't know. I thought it was kind of nice, to be honest. But my gosh, that suit of armor looks awful. It looks so uncomfortable. I don't envy her.
It was like half a suit of armor.
Yeah.
It's like her dress was sticking out from underneath the top half of it.
Knights and dresses. And I wrote, is role playing really writing? Thoughts?
These are the questions we need.
Is LARPing writing?
I feel like if you asked some nerds that they would say yes.
Yeah, it depends who you ask.
It's definitely a creative process. I don't know if I would call it the same as writing.
I guess it depends on how you're doing it. Yeah,
LARPers, let us know in the comments.
Do you count it as writing? I don't know. I'd say you are making a story when you're LARPing. I don't think it's writing.
The storytelling, just not writing.
Yeah, exactly. I understand. I guess, though, in this, we're ignoring that because watching kids literally write would be boring. But it's kind of they could have done it in a way where like maybe Andy's like actually writing, and then Alice is the one LARPing because she's a character in his story.
Yeah.
I can see
They could
that.
have done that, and he's like, and this happens, and then that would happen. I don't know. That I think would have been a little bit better in my opinion. But what do I know? I'm not an educational advisor. I guess if kids started LARPing, that's not a bad thing.
I like the wizard. Like I felt that actor was having a lot of fun with his role.
Yeah, he was just kind
He
of
was
like,
enjoying himself,
yeah, he's just kind of like, I'm here. I'm gonna have fun with it. Like, probably a little overqualified.
probably. But hey, he probably just needed a job.
Yeah. Oh, I also wrote they were casually speciesist against dragons.
I thought something similar, but then Figment kind of brushed it off. He was like, "Hey, some are nice."
Yeah, they're just
Something
kind
like
of like,
that.
sorry, and then just move on. He's in the background. He's like, I'm gonna get the children.
Hashtag not all dragons.
um, so they come up with this like generic story, which is so much like kids. Actually, this is a story I would have told as a kid. Like, oh, something happens, and now we have to go ask a wise character what to do, and we go on like this task, and we don't talk about like the stuff that happens while we go on the task, just how hard it was supposedly, and then the wise character tells us what to do. We go back, and that's no problem at all. We just get there, zippity zap. Then we do the thing, and it's solved. And that's pretty much what happened here. I will say, I noticed, I don't know if you guys noticed, a sign in the dragon's lair or cave, whatever, says Disney Procs, like Didnee, and then Procs, Procs. And I was like, that's interesting, like Disney Productions.
Hmm.
Little Easter egg, I guess.
I think I did notice that now that you mentioned it.
Yeah. It amused me because it's spelt stupid, and I love when Disney is spelt stupid.
Like the Disney and Daphne meme.
Exactly. I used to say the Disney when I was a kid, so just to be dumb. Oh yeah. Also, I was like, okay, wait. The wizard forgets his magic, so he can't send Alice back to Wonderland. So Alice as a knight has to do all this, has to do the stuff that we're told and we don't see, and ask a wise dragon how to help the wizard get his magic back. Why doesn't she ask the wise dragon how she could get back home?
Again,
There's the rub.
Yeah.
There were so many things with this, with all the powers of their imagination. They just had to go in this very roundabout way of finding this wizard, but then the wizard doesn't know the magic, and then they have to ask the dragon, and then the dragon gives them a nonsense phrase, and like that doesn't work, and then they have to rewrite the story, and then there's a witch who stole the spell book, and then it's so meandering.
Yeah.
But I guess, like you said, it is sort of like how a kid would write a story, so I guess in that respect it does make sense.
Yeah, like I guess my thing is, it feels very much like something like it feels like that's how the script's written, essentially.
hmm
They're like, okay, we have this goal of we want to have this thing teach children how to write stories. Figure it out. Oh yeah, and it has to involve a Disney character.
Yeah, we need to use clips from our archives to cut down on
Yeah.
budget costs.
Someone else is like, I really like Alice in Wonderland. They're like, cool, great. The kid can write a story with her or something. It doesn't make any sense.
And also throw in the witch from Snow White for some reason.
Yes.
Yeah, that was weird, actually.
I, I loved how they said
And
she was
she
chased.
died from the forces of good, right?
Yes, she was chased
Yeah.
out of the kingdom by a magic thunderstorm sent by the forces of good.
So good, yes.
Fall off the mountain with a scream. Forces of good. Ah! Gruesome death.
I love those magical thunderstorms.
Act of God. I say. And again, it's also never explained why Alice is even out of Wonderland. So It's a cute short. It's just a frustrating short when you really dig into it. You really have to treat this like cotton candy. It's not substantial. You just have to be like, that's cute, and move on.
Thanks for listening to Wonderland Wednesday. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow my co-hosts as well. Jenna and Mark will be back next time, but in the meantime, be sure to follow them using their links in the description. If you want more of my content, all my podcasts are available on YouTube as well as most podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this show, check out one of the other podcasts or check out my Patreon for bonus and extended episodes you won't find anywhere else. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.